everybody. Thanks for tuning into Border City Rock Talk, where you get great news, great interviews, great interviewees with sometimes a comedic touch. Before I bring my guests on, please hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel, or my guest Paul Gilbert is going to kick your ass. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I was telling you earlier, I'm $1 million shy of being a millionaire, but I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good. I just want to start by saying, well, we're going to talk about the Dio album in a second here. That's why we're here, obviously. But Mr. Big is obviously on tour, and you've got fans worldwide. Actually, I almost forgot, and this is what brought it up. I have to tell you, a worldwide fan from Argentina, Rosanna Chilata, says, to say hi to Paul, my favorite guitarist. She loves the album Behold Electric Guitar. And her favorite song is Let That Battery Die. So Rosanna from Argentina says hola.
Oh, right on. Actually, I wrote that song thinking that it could be a Mr. Big tune. But I never really finished it. Like I just had parts of it, but I always really liked it. And so it ended up just evolving into an instrumental song. But the initial inspiration was I was thinking of Eric's voice.
Yeah, for sure. Right on. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the Dio album. First of all, I looked on it, and at first, or listened to it, well, actually, when it was sent to me, I wasn't sure if it was going to be an instrumental or, well, I didn't even think instrumental, to be honest with you. I thought you might have brought in some singers, but it is totally an instrumental. It totally works. You found a way to make it work with all the rhythm lines and everything with Ronnie's voice. And I looked, and at just the last minute, I realized for the viewers, it's including I'm pretty sure every genre of Ronnie James, including his tenure with Black Sabbath. And Mob Rules was the last one I thought, oh, he missed that, but you got Country Girl in there.
Yeah. I wanted to do about a third Sabbath and a third Rainbow and a third solo Dio. And, there's so many great songs that to narrow it down to one album of songs, the one thing that I did was I realized that some of the songs are kind of long because they've got long instrumental parts. For example, I love the song Stargazer. I love Light in the Black and Gates of Babylon. But those have like these long keyboard or guitar solos in the middle. And I thought, this is a Dio album. I want to keep it, really focused on the vocals. So, instead of those longer ones with the instrumental parts, I tended to do more like Man of the Silver Mountain, which is a short guitar solo, but lots of singing. And of course, since I'm playing the singing parts on guitar, I still get to be busy doing what I, playing my instrument.
Right. And who else? You brought in one person for this. Obviously, obviously you could play drums. Do you play drums and you wanted just to bring someone in, or?
I love playing drums, but it takes me a while because I'm not, my drumming muscles aren't in shape. So I thought I'd best bring in a professional. So I had Bill Ray, who actually played on that same record, the Behold Electric Guitar record, and I've done a lot of touring with Bill. And he's a Dio fan too, so he already knew the songs. Mm-hmm. And but I played bass, I played guitar, and I played all the keyboard parts on guitar. So, for example, like that synthesizer intro of Holy Diver, I was actually able to create that with guitars and using like volume swells and delay pedal, and so it was fun to figure out ways to get a guitar to sound like something other than the guitar.
Right on. Well, just let the fans know, stick around, because at the end, I've twisted his arm. Paul's going to play a song for us near the end, or some of it anyways. And the reason why I bring that up is because my next song is, what one or two songs do you think that you're hemming and hawing about, you want to include, but you don't want to have it too long of an album? Is there a couple of songs you're thinking, I wish I would have put it in? Or,
well, I'm pretty happy with the ones. I mean, if anything, like I could do a volume 2.
Yeah.
And do all the ones. I mean, the other ones I was thinking about, like I mentioned, Stargazer, Light in the Black, the Gates of Babylon is amazing. A Tarot Woman, I almost did that one, but the keyboard solo, I would want to learn that on guitar, and that would just take some homework. What was the other ones? Sign of the Southern Cross. Yeah, I love that one.
You know what? That's actually something I was thinking about the last couple of days to ask you, because that's one of my favorite songs off of Mob Rules.
Mob Rules, yeah. So that one, and turn up the night, the opening track, or what's in the misty morning.
Oh,
Children of the Sea.
that's a great song. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, the thing with like those Sabbath albums, and really the Dio stuff too, like there were some, some of those songs were played on the radio, but I think most people who were fans of that music, we had the album and we listened to the whole thing. It wasn't like a band where you focus on the hit, you listen to the whole record. So to me, like the songs that are sort of considered to be the deeper album cuts, like I did Country Girl, I did
Or Talk to Strangers,
Lady Evil, and those aren't seemingly as well known, but my guess is like anybody who had those records probably listened to those songs just as much as the better known ones.
Well, Don't Talk to Strangers. I mean, that one of the best riffs on that album was the riff for Don't Talk to Strangers. Not the beginning part, but when Vivian goes into his riff, it's just classic. So
yeah, that's such a killer song.
Yeah. So you included Vivian and Tony and Richie in there, and just trying to think. Yeah. So no, just leading away to Caught in the Middle. I'm like, oh, I wish you would have done that, but you're going to. So, anyways, where can people get that? It was just released on Friday, correct?
I think, yeah, that sounds right. I believe so. I'll go with that.
You're a busy man, Paul.
Well, I recorded it last year, so to me, all the other stuff is, it's more business than music.
Yeah, you got people for that.
On a good day.
Yeah, I'll put the links below for people to go and get that album. And so obviously, I think you're most widely known as the guitarist of Mr. Big, and the big news broke this year. When I spoke to Eric, and I think Billy had previously spoke to a couple people, you guys are touring the farewell tour, and noticing the tour dates. Correct me if I'm wrong. So far, only public is the dates starting in Japan, doing some Thailand, Philippines. Am I missing something, or is the American dates coming out later?
Yeah, for the summer, we're doing all Japan and Asia, or Southeast Asia. And then we're going to take a break and then hit the road again early in 2024.
Right.
And that's where we'll try to get everywhere else.
Okay. Make sure you hit Canada. At least just one city, please.
I hope so. My last trip to Canada was like, it was really, really nice. I was walking around a lake and it just cured me.
Well, just to make it easier for you, I'll get them to move Toronto right on to the border of Michigan. Okay.
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 I've driven there I live in Portland, so it's a 6-hour drive from where I live.
Yeah, that's right. You're on the East Coast as well. I'm in Eastern time zone, but not the East Coast. So speaking of guitar players, who was your inspiration growing up? Just for the two people on this planet that don't know.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it has to do with just the age I was when I was learning guitar. So I do have to give credit to my uncle, who was, had already been playing guitar for 10 years and was great. And so he was an influence, just because, he'd come over and I could watch him play, sitting in the chair next to me. And then he also heavily encouraged me to listen to certain players. He was like, you got to listen to Hendrix. So he was pretty forceful about it. Like, you got to get these 4 Hendrix albums and listen to those. So I did. Led Zeppelin was starting to be on the radio. I heard Stairway to Heaven, and I initially loved the vocals, but then the guitar solo was killer too. So I bought that album. I got into, and that led to like seeing the Led Zeppelin movie. The Song Remains the Same, and I used to just hours of air guitar along with that record. And before I could play, I was like pretending I could play before I could ever actually get a note out of the instrument
with a tennis racket.
Yeah, but that's important. Where you're learning the sound. And you're visualizing what, that's like the target. And then later on, you pick up the bow and the arrow and aim at it. But, without the target, it's hard to know where to aim. So, and then when I started taking lessons, my teacher turned me on to Black Sabbath. There's all the rock albums. I mean, there's all the big rock, like arena rock bands of the 70s. So Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, Heart, Cheap Trick, Pat Travers, Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush, Robin Trower, AC/DC, And then as it hit the 80s, Gary Moore, Yngwie, Akira Takasaki from Loudness. And then, more recently, I got more into like blues stuff, sort of to discover where the 70s guys came from.
Yeah.
So I heard Jimmy Page, but I hadn't heard Freddie King or, Otis Rush, or, and you hear that, it's like, oh, it's that Jimmy Page lick before Jimmy Page. You sort of figure out, where a lot of the roots are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so contemporary, currently, is there any underrated guitarists out there that you think are not as recognized for their accomplishments? Or
well, there were a lot of players that I grew up listening to that were never had big hits. Like I love Kim Mitchell. You mentioned Canada, for example.
Yeah.
Both in Max Webster and his solo stuff, and I listened to that a lot. Billy Sheehan's band Talus. The original guitar player was Dave Constantino, and man, I used to play all those songs in my cover band. We used to go see Talus all the time. So and he opened for us. Years later, Mr. Big was playing in Buffalo, and Dave Constantino's band opened. I went out. I loved it. It was so great to hear him play. He's still great.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see other players. It's of course they're hard to think of because they're not the ones that you think of all the time. Like to me, Ace Frehley was a big deal. Although he's famous, but a lot of times that was a funny thing. I remember I had a subscription to Guitar Player magazine when I was a kid, and this is now you've got like YouTube comments and people can write their nasty comment.
Yeah.
But back in the day, the version of that was like the letters people would send into Guitar Player magazine.
Yeah.
And every time they would put one of my heroes on the cover, the hate mail would come pouring in. They'd put Ace Frehley on the cover, and people were like, he can't play. Like, and I'd be like, what are you talking about? I love Ace Frehley.
Yeah.
They would make the jazz people angry.
Mm-hmm.
The people who knew the fancy chords, they'd get angry because Kiss had simple chords. And of course Ted Nugent, he was on the cover, and people, what? How can he say that about blowing up a pigeon? And it's like, it's a joke.
Yeah. Everybody's lost their humor these days. But yeah, there's so much tension. Like you bring up Ace Frehley. I think Mick Mars was an underrated guitar player, and right now there's all that shit going on with Motley Crue. But I think it was not even last week or something. Ace Frehley was it from last week or not even? Maybe it was last year. I don't know. He was commenting on the fact of I guess Paul Stanley was on Howard Stern, and he said, why didn't you bring Ace on or whatever? And he said, well, then we would have to call ourselves Piss. So I mean, social media these days, it's just so easy to get your emotions out there.
Yeah, I mean,
you're not writing letters.
Too. It's easy to laugh at when you're not currently embroiled in one.
Yeah.
It's funny what sort of gets your goat. I do so much teaching, and because of that, I've my eye and ear have been really trained at a lot of like really arcane technical details.
Mm-hmm.
But these details have to do, they're common in certain eras. And because I grew up in the 70s, I tend to really like the way people from the 70s played. And there's certain, stuff that I didn't even realize, like that I just sort of, from trying to copy that sound.
Right.
And try to copy those players, there's certain techniques that come with that. And when I see players that don't have that, I'm like,
yeah.
I turn into the nastiest, crankiest, most cantankerous old man. It's horrible. I really got to watch myself because it's just a different era. Like not everybody has to play the same. But I got in trouble at my school. With this, some of the students got mad at me because I've lightly criticized John Five, who had replaced Mick Mars on the tour, because he had his guitar up really high.
Mm.
And I'm like, what the hell? You can't play Looks That Kill with the guitar low. Come on,
yeah, just strapped
like,
around.
I understand that if you got to play something tricky.
Yeah,
but this is Motley Crue. Come on, didn't Nikki Sixx say something like, dude, come on, get it, And so I tend to, and that's how I grew up. I grew up idolizing Jimmy Page. I had my Les Paul down on my knees, and that just,
you've got quite the long arms and fingers.
At the same time, speaking of guitar players who, and I love John Five. Like I've, he's a good friend, and he's the nicest, sweetest guy in the world. Plays great. So, but I do, that's the thing is like from seeing my students who have their guitar play, it messes up some of the 70s stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a way around it. Like the most important technique in the world is listening.
Yeah.
If you can listen, you can solve any of the finger stuff becomes really secondary. True. But another guy who I love is from It Bites. What's his name? The guy, Francis Dunnery. Okay. And the reason I bring him up is he like breaks every rule for me because my rules are like you got to play like Jimmy Page. Francis Dunnery has the guitar up like it's like a necklace, really really high, and I love him. Like he plays great guitar, sings great. I love the songs. I met him. He's a cool guy. So it's the rules are meant to be broken.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, so as long as you get your music across. Some people may say it doesn't matter what your technique is, unless you're a teacher.
and I try to frame it as like when I'm teaching my students, my strong opinions. I try to let it be like this is an opinion. For me, it makes stuff easier.
Yeah.
I said like try it for a week. It's a science experiment. If it gets better and easier, then that's nice. If it doesn't, forget about it. We'll go plan B.
There you go. Before I let you go, Paul, I've got a couple of things. What's the opposite of unsubscribe?
I suppose it's subscribe.
Yeah, make sure you guys...
It sounds like a trick question.
It's not a trick question.
Unsubscribe.
I've had a couple of guys get really stumped because they thought I was thinking of something, less obvious, and they're like, not subscribe. This one, I'm like, let's go back to what you just said. Yeah. So subscribe to the channel so you get these great interviews. And the Mr. Big tour, is there any possibility that I know with Mr. Big would be complete without Pat, rest in peace. But have you guys done any kind of work on maybe a new tune or not that may appear on the tour?
I've got some ideas, but actually I broke my hip a month ago.
Oh man!
And I'm now I'm held together with titanium, and I'm just about back to a normal walk.
Okay.
But all my songwriting plans got pushed back a month because I was just I couldn't get out of bed.
You couldn't take a walk.
Yeah. Now I got my cane, and I did a pretty long walk this morning. So
nice.
But I want to do a caneless walk.
There you go.
So I'm sort of playing catch up.
Okay, so there is a possibility. Correct? That you may...
I'm sorry, say it again?
There is a possibility.
Oh, absolutely. Like, actually, after the tour, we've got a pretty long break before it starts up again in 2024. So we haven't booked anything or really made definite plans, but I think we're all kind of thinking about it a little bit. So there's definitely a chance.
That's awesome. Okay, so as we talked about earlier, you said you grabbed your guitars. I hope it's not too far that you have to get your cane.
The trick is that getting it plugged into the system. Let me grab an acoustic, because that you might hear.
Anyways, thanks again, Paul, for this interview. I'll have the links below for the new Dio album. And we look forward to you on tour, and make sure you come to Canada.
Right on. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul.
Have a good one. Rock and roll.